Good morning. My name is Izak Labushan. I've been asked by Workforce Australia to do a little introduction on myself, um, and that's what this is going to be. So I'm just going to take you through what is on the web um, on me and try to get you to make some sense out of that. The doctorate referred to here is an honorary doctorate in ecclesiastic law, which was based on a thesis. This is described in the LinkedIn profile of myself. So if you go to the bottom corner of that web page and you go to this LinkedIn profile, and under, what was it, not activity, what was it, experience, I think it's under experience, where it is under education. So there's a whole thing there you can read about how it came about. It's used. It was used as the basis for PhDs from a university there, and I was asked to acknowledge it. It is of no relevance in Australia because it's Roman Dutch law. It has some relevance internationally because it's based on Actio Popularis, intervention in the public interest. But more of that perhaps later. As a result of this web page containing all sorts of things, I created one specifically for Australia, which is the one in the very left column at the top, called Oz Overview. This will give you a bit of a background as to what I did in South Africa. I did all sorts of weird and wonderful things, and it explains how I ended up back here, and I might run through a very succinct, I hope brief explanation of that. I did a lot of land reform deals, put them together with the United Nations in South Africa, and I was invited to do the keynote address at a conference hosted by Dr. Ken Kwako from the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency of the World Bank. That's him over there, and Paul Runga from Africa Project Access, and this was the Project Finance World. So I did the keynote address at this project, as you can see from there, and that address made some predictions with regards to expropriation of land without compensation in South Africa, and those predictions were basically based on what had been happening in projects in the rest of Africa, and what the legislation was, what the case law was. This is a very long, involved presentation for those of you wanting to get into the semantics of land reform. But I compared what was happening in South Africa to other countries where the same thing sort of took place, like Zimbabwe, and I made some predictions. I was immediately criticized as being an alarmist. If you're white, you're a racist by default. If you're half intelligent, you're a narcissist. If you're male, you're misogynist. So I had the mainstream media doing their typical ignorance about this. I got out of that and I got into chartering a vessel, which I did. I then became a charter captain for anything under 100-ton power of sail, the east coast of Africa, and you can go and have a look at that if you want to. In 2018, the government voted for expropriation of land without compensation, but by that time, and if you read through this overview, you will see that by that time most of the banks in South Africa had on-sold the mortgage bonds of the farmers that were going to have their land expropriated to the likes of HSBC. These were underwritten by the multilateral investment guarantees from the World Bank, and the call options on those, what were going to be junk bonds, were bought by some very unsavory characters in the international political and economic world. I'm not going to go into names and all this sort of stuff at this stage. Anyway, I was accused of all sorts of things, including having been sent to South Africa to embarrass them, and there were requests for questioning, and one of them was even for incarceration pending questioning because of these wild allegations. Those have all died away. There's police clearances from both sides, so I'm not a runaway criminal or anything like that. It's just that I did something which was not, I suppose, politically correct or fitting in the narrative. These days one has to be very careful what you do. So I came back here with very little. I'd also gone through a divorce, decided to sign over everything I had in South Africa because I could see there was going to be a long, drawn out fight in the divorce about this. So I just walked away. I came over here and started over. One of the so I ended up, and if you look at the LinkedIn profile, you'll see that I couldn't renew my licenses with as an Australian certified investment planner or as a dealer's representative because I was required to do graduate and postgraduate. The Australian Business Institute invited me to do an MBA. I asked them for the syllabus so that I could write the exam. They wanted $45,000 and 2 years of my time, which I didn't have. It was the same with my commercial license. AMSA in Australia required me to spend 10 months and $10,000 to become the equivalent of Master 24, and they were completely resistant on accepting my logbook. So I was subjected to what I laughingly referred to eventually, and it's not really funny, obsessive compulsive regulation disorder. There are many reasons for that existing. We won't go into that. Anyway, the bottom line is that I ended up building dog and cat cages with for the RSPCA. At the end of which COVID hit, and I couldn't continue that. The upshot was that I joined the NICE, a new enterprise incentive scheme, and I got an organisation called Moby Door on the go, which is a company. Moby Door was positioned to assist people without trade qualifications to get into a business easily, and that was going to franchise. The other part of the strategy was to assist South Africans immigrating, so I did a joint, well, not a joint venture, an ambassador deal with Fin Global, who are involved in assisting South Africans with financial immigration and to access models like the Business Innovation Investment Visa Program of Australia. The investor that I had accessed had his entire shopping centre burnt down during the riots against the incarceration of one of the previous presidents of South Africa, Zuma, and so that fell through. I couldn't get any financing for this. I still can't get any financing for this because I'm over 65. That appears to be a major block. So if anybody wants to buy into this, there's some collaboration opportunities here. You can go and have a look at that. It won't cost you too much. You need to buy some stock for $50,000. You need to buy a truck. Those can be yours. We'll supply the training. We'll help you get your franchise up and running. We'll put you in contact with the market. So anybody that wants to invest in this, but I can't sit around waiting for investors all my life on this. I ended up doing the refit for somebody on their yacht. I went and I'm a musician. I created the Zach Slab page. And I ended up doing the resident musician gig at Heron Island for a while, and I suffer from a condition called rickettsia, which is a parasitical bacterial infection from tick bites. It's known as rickettsia. It's not well recognized in Australia. It's the upshot of it. It gives you debilitating chronic fatigue syndrome, which is what I suffer from, and the treatment regimes for this involve antibiotics, antiparasiticals, antibacterials, and prophylactics. So when COVID hit, some of this medication was actually banned. Just astounding to witness this. I never thought I'd ever see anything like this. It was quite cult-like. Both the substances banned are from natural substances. One being quinine, which was a prophylactic used for malaria. If you make your blood bitter, the mosquitoes won't bite you. It's a very simple concept. If you add chlorine, it aids the gradual dissipation. It's very old technology. It was called chloroquine. It was available across the counter in Africa. It still is, I think. And if you put a turbocharger on that, you can call it hydroxychloroquine. Well, they banned that. It was like banning Disprin. It was like fanatical, cult-like behavior. I don't want to get into this. They also banned ivermectin, which is a naturally occurring substance which has been used in the treatment of worms in animals and in humans for decades upon decades. Ostensibly because these would have been could have been used as cures. They're now prescribing these medicines for COVID, so that whole fanaticism and hysteria has died away. Anyway, I got so ill that I couldn't take Moby-Dill forward. I needed to go out to a property because anybody that didn't want to get involved in vaccinations was kind of demonized as a mad person, which I certainly am not. I used to investigate military and national intelligence in South Africa, and if you go back to the web page, you'll see there's a military intelligence report there under a commission of inquiry, so I'm pretty familiar with most of the minutes of the International Biological Warfare Conventions. That commission still exists, so this is one of the reasons people didn't want to employ me, because they thought people would come and assassinate me. I threw national intelligence agents out of some political parties. It was one of those that recommended I be incarcerated pending questioning following the disclosures of the bonds, and why one of the reasons I left. Anyway, I created these initiatives which require eye-watering amounts of money to get off the ground. There's a control group blood bank. Of course, if you have medical experimentation, blood banks, unvaccinated blood banks are very popular now. At the time that I did that, I was accused of being crazy and mad and a tinfoil hatter, uninformed people. That conspiracy theories, Asia are in the business of conspiracy theories. Is it a good or a bad conspiracy? When a board has a meeting on how to make more money out of the public, that's a conspiracy. If you minute it, it's in existence. If you carried it out, it's in execution. You need to discover whether it's a good or a bad conspiracy. These days, when the media mention conspiracy theories, it's like racism. Racism, oh, it's bad. Conspiracy theories are bad. What if I was saying good things about the Australian, the Swaziland culture, where I had projects happening, what if I said bad things about the culture, which the Prince and I just discussed, which would improve the culture? Is that bad racism? So is all racism bad? It's racism to discuss a culture which is race-based. It's racism without a doubt, but there's good and bad racism. There's good and bad conspiracy theories. There are a lot of these theories which have been well documented and no longer theories. They're just in existence. Anyway, it involves Actio Popularis, which is litigation wing. There's lots of that litigation starting up now. Lots of there's money to be made out of suing people for vaccine injuries and losses because of the mandates. It was just crazy. As I said, there's a blood bank. There's all sorts of alternative medicine systems, a research and development station, and so on. This requires a massive amount of money. Doesn't seem like it's going to be forthcoming. Part of it was forthcoming, and the aircraft have been bought, so I can't sit around waiting for that. So we did a refit on the yacht of a friend of mine, and he bought an anchor. We approached the patent holder of this anchor, who is in Mackay, and obtained the distribution and manufacturing rights for 6 countries in Africa. We created M&I International Distribution, which is in the business of facilitating the distribution of innovative Australian products to international markets. There's a lot of government programs that got involved that like what we're intending to do, Oz Trade, Oz Industry, the Government New Business Planning in Queensland, Small Business Development Grants Program we've accessed, the Self-Employment Assistance Program we've accessed, Regional Development Queensland. So I'm starting a 8-week course which will give me a certificate in business administration and entrepreneurship at the end of the day, so at least I'll have some piece of paper to back up what's happening with this. It'll be government endorsed business plan, I guess, and we're getting the project endorsed overseas. There's 4 months manufacturing lead time, so there's not going to be any money in this for a long time. That market's very small. We need to expand to bigger markets, so we put a pitch forward the other day to a venture capitalist with various options, financing options. We believe that pitch is successful, and we should be receiving money, which means we can start the manufacturing process on these anchors. So that's up and running. So that's what I'm going to use, something very simple to get back onto my financial feet again, so that since they unbanned the medication, which is banned, in fact now prescribing it for COVID-19, this stuff is too funny for words. It's just absurd. All I want to do is just get this on the go. So I suppose now that I'm involved in educational training and this program, I won't have to report for Workforce Australia. And yeah, well, that's basically where we're up to. I was knocked back because I didn't have any certification apart from a white card from a lot of organisations because of my age. I was knocked back for finance. I was knocked back because I had written books, which if you go and look at my publications page, which is all sorts of weird fanatical reactions to these. I compared Freemasonry to the Bible because my father was the head of the Freemasons, and there was all sorts of stuff going on. The Commission of Inquiry ended up. Go read the books if you want. Just don't ring me up and get upset. I was told that the board of directors would really have liked to have had me on board. It's a pity I'm listed as an anti-Mason. Some people, as I've said, were afraid that people would come into their business and assassinate me because I've investigated military and national intelligence. So M&I is there so that we'll be our own boss. It's with another fellow South African and somebody else, the financier who's travelled the world and has got an open mind, and I can deal with people that don't have cult-like reactions to people like me. I guarantee you that I'm not an idiot. I certainly do lots of research, and I've won court cases against some of the best barristers in Southern Africa, so I can't be an idiot. Anyway, that's the introduction for what it's worth, and for those of you that have been along and listened, thank you very much for your time. I hope it gives you some insight.